welcome to episode 139 of MMO Weekly, presented as always by Chitty's Cheesesteaks. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, joined by Matthias Altman, Kirasaki, Chris Bello. And guys, the Mets have been real bad since the last time we spoke. They've lost 8 in a row. I don't know if they know to bring the bats with them on road trips. I think they left everything in Queens. I think they went to California. Those might have been antiques that they were holding at the plate. I don't think they used them, but it's not going good right now. 7-12, last in the NL East. And the spiral seems to be spiraling right now. This is just so far an epic failure to start the season. First, it's almost 20 games in. We were talking off air. The pitching really is not the issue so far. They just can't hit. And it seems to be a lot bigger than just Juan Soto being injured. A lot we can say, a lot we're going to get to. But, I want to get your thoughts here as we open this very solemn show on a Thursday. Matthias, go ahead.
Yeah, this team is a complete disaster right now. I'm just going to say it. And to your point, I'm not talking about the starting pitching. And that's the biggest to me, it's the biggest crime of this whole thing. They're wasting excellent starting pitching, in particular from McLean, Holmes, and Peralta. I know Peralta's ERA may not look sparkling, but he's pitched well.
Yeah.
And Holmes yesterday goes 5 innings. He gives up 2 runs. That's not a bad outing. He had no margin for error. Or McLean throwing 7 strong innings, dueling with Yoshi Yamamoto. That was a great pitcher's duel. But again, you score 1 run for him. They've scored 2 or fewer runs in 10 of their 19 games. That's over 50%. I mean, there's just way too many uncompetitive at-bats, especially when they're trailing. I mean, look at the 9th inning against the A's on Sunday. I looked away from the game feed for about, 2 minutes. Somehow there were already 2 outs in the 9th inning. Before I could even get the game back on, the game was over. Or Tuesday against the Dodgers. You're down 2-1. All right, big bats coming up. 3, 4, and 5 in the lineup. Nope, let's just chase every breaking pitch in the dirt from Alex Vesucci. He didn't even have to throw a pitch in the strike zone, and he nearly got an immaculate inning. So they're pressing. And look, I get it. They're playing poorly. I understand why they're pressing, but it's just leading to some just god-awful at-bats. So I don't know what the solution is, but right now they need to get it fixed fast. I know we're 19 games into a 162-game season, but I mean, if, come Memorial Day, they're still struggling, it's going to be harder to defend this roster.
Yeah, it's been terrible. There's no way around it. And, I feel like every at-bat has been like, all right, strike 1 right down the middle, sweeper away, they swing at its 0-2, maybe they'll take a ball, and then it's a ground out to third base. I mean, I thought I was going through the motions, and I had just kind of disassociated because I saw Max Muncy, I feel like every other play, just scooping up a ground ball up third, throwing out the runner at first. So not only have the at-bats been uncompetitive, but they're just abysmal at everything offensively right now. The approach stinks. Nobody's walking. Nobody's slugging. MJ Melendez came up and had like 2. They showed a graphic on ESPN. It was like MJ Melendez is 2 for 2 tonight. The rest of the Mets are 0 for 16 with like 8 strikeouts. And I was like, wow. I was like, if MJ Melendez wasn't called up, it would have just been another night where they were going down 1, 2, 3 over and over and over again. So that's kind of the state we're in right now. They're second to last in OPS right now. The only team that's worse than them right now is the White Sox. Their on-base percentage as a team is under 300. Brett Beatty's batting 3rd last night. God only knows why. He doesn't have a walk yet this year. And there's just nothing that gets you excited about this team. I mean, the only thing that got me excited last night was the 11 pitch at bat from Lindor. And even waking up this morning, people are mad at him because he's smiling. So that's just kind of showing you the state of where everything is offensively. And who knows, maybe they're getting some tiny tap, on the river in Chicago. Maybe they're all relaxing, trying to get ready for the series against the Cubs, who just wallop the Phillies. But nothing looks positive right now heading into the next series.
Yeah, they better not be relaxing in Chicago. They better be in the track man in the basement of Wrigley Field figuring this out. I don't want to see anybody relaxing. I don't know. It's just this offense is doing the exact opposite of what they intended and advertised. Like you said, they're second to last in OPS. It seems like every at-bat is a 3-pitch, either ground out or a strikeout. Nothing is really competitive. They don't move runners over. Bo Bichette has been awful with runners in scoring position, and that is why you paid the guy $43 million a year to be here, was to drive runners, and he can't do that. Francisco Alvarez is your best power bat, like you talking about the drought, with 4 home runs. I understand Juan Soto's not here, but he's also only one player. If in a lineup of guys that aren't doing anything, Soto would just get walked every time anyway. It wouldn't really matter. The other team would take the bat out of his hands. So, I've talked on the Manzo Minute recaps a lot that this team needs to find their identity. And I don't even know if I think it's past that now. You need to figure out how to score runs. I don't care about identities or anything. I think we're past that. You got to just drive runners in. A man on third with less than 2 out, hit a fly ball to bring him in. Like, it's just little things that were supposed to be better from the year before that have seemingly gotten worse. They don't really run the bases that well either. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. Whether it's the third base coach kind of not making sense when he should or he shouldn't. And just in general, there's not a lot of baseball instincts going on. Like, I don't want to pile on Lindor. He hit a home run the other night. I understand. I don't care about the smile thing. That was a great at-bat between him and Ohtani. Ohtani just won the at-bat. That's baseball. But it just feels like his spidey senses got zapped, like he's Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 2. And now, like, he's got to put his glasses on again. He's falling off the walls. He can't climb. Like, I don't know what's going on here, guys. I don't like to do this in April. That's not my shtick. But unfortunately, that old adage is, and, it's forget about the division, but you can win the division. You can't win the division in May, but you can lose it in May or April, whatever you want to say. Like, they're last in the division right now. Obviously, 6 teams per league make the playoffs. But if you keep digging yourself into a hole here and we get into June, like you're saying, Memorial Day, and they're still spiraling, sometimes you put yourself in a hole early on that you really can't dig yourself out of, no matter how well you start playing. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a lack of urgency, a lack of energy. You got to think sooner than later, Carlos Mendoza's name is going to be, on the hot seat here, whether it's justified, not, whatever. Phillies did it a few years ago with Girardi, and Rob Thompson took the helm, and the Phillies went on to a World Series. There's going to be something. They need a jolt to something, because it just seems like they're so lethargic and like I keep saying bright-eyed. Like, the moment just seems much too big for them, and there's no hope in the dugout, anything, that if they're in a hole or whatever, that they could work themselves out of it so far. They all just kind of look lost.
Yeah, and there was an article, Max Goodman from NJ.com, who's been doing great work. He put out an article today. He even spoke to Troy Snicker last night, the new hitting coach. And, I mean, just the opening of it was him describing Bo Bichette looking dazed after last night's game. Like, how in the world could a team with this much talent be playing so poorly? It feels like it's the same thing we went through last summer, with, you got all this talent. How are they all underperforming at the exact same time? And the thing is that last year, the reason they fell apart was largely because of the pitching staff. But like I was alluding to earlier, they're not even giving the pitching staff a chance. Once they fall behind, it feels like the game is over.
Yep.
I mean, they got shut out 3 times in the 4 games. They've already been shut out 4 times this year. And there was another stat Gary Cohen said where they've already had 3 separate scoreless streaks of at least 17 innings. To do that this early in the year is it's honestly almost impressive. Like I said earlier, there are 143 games left. They can get better. They could get worse too. The only thing giving them a shred of hope so far is that, other than the Braves, nobody in the National League East is, tearing the cover off the ball. I mean, the Phillies actually have a worse run differential than them, if you wouldn't believe it. So there's still time, but I don't know how much time they can allow. And to your point about Carlos Mendoza, I don't know what firing a manager would actually accomplish, but, it's not unreasonable for people to question whether or not Mendoza should stay at the, as the skipper. So I can't blame people for wondering there. To your point about Lindor, again, I don't love speculating about this, but he did get tagged in the face the first series of the weekend. Sure. And it feels like ever since then he's been pretty dazed. So who knows, maybe that played a role in that. But I know everyone's piled on him, but I feel like it's sort of unfair to just place all their struggles on him, because it's really, it feels like almost everyone outside of Francisco Alvarez right now on the offensive side of things is just stuck in a rut.
Yeah, everybody is struggling to the max right now, which is really unfortunate. And I think when you compare last year's offensive struggles to this year's offensive struggles, the big X factor for me is at least last year when you looked at team OPS and you looked at how many base runners they were getting an inning, they were still top 10, almost top 5 in OPS. They were walking and they were getting a lot of traffic, and the at-bats were competitive. And that would be a factor that would actually have me hopeful for the next series or the next homestand is, hey, at least they're getting their walks. At least they're working pitchers. I mean, the entire Dodgers series, it seemed like it was going to be a 9-inning shutout. I mean, Justin Robleski, who's a 4-inning pitcher, let's be honest with who he is, almost went 9. And he would have if Dave Roberts didn't take him out. Yamamoto almost went 9. Shohei Ohtani, outside of that 111 pitch at bat by Lindor, could have gone 8 or 9 innings last night. So this team is just putting uncompetitive at-bats together. There's not a lot to be hopeful for because Francisco Lindor's got the hamate injury, and you can tell he's trying to play through it right now because he's got no power outside of the one homer. And then a guy like Jorge Polanco and Bo Bichette, just whether they're injured or not, haven't meshed well. And outside of those concerning factors, the big one for me is that none of the young kids are really putting it together right now. And I spoke about this a lot last year, and we wrote some articles also, Matthias, about it. The big thing for the 2025 Mets was, is Mark Vientos really a 40 home run bat? Is Brett Baty going to be able to put together a 700 plus OPS? Is Francisco Alvarez going to be the next, Mike Piazza, Paul LaDuca, whoever you want to put that to? I don't know. But if they're not, and you're just relying on 4 guys at the top of your lineup, you're not going to have a fluid offense. And this year it's been nobody. So Juan Soto is going to come back, sure. But right now, this is their lineup. Their lineup is going to be Francisco Lindor, Jorge Polanco, Bo Bichette, Brett Baty, Mark Vientos. All these guys that are playing right now are going to be regulars, outside of Tommy Pham and MJ Melendez, but that's your 8 and your 9 hitter. So that's what's concerning to me right now is that we are watching what this offense is, and we're already talking about approach and the offensive struggles. They've lost 8 games in a row, and we're not even through April. And when it comes to firing the manager and that discussion that we were starting to open up a little bit, sure, maybe it's not going to do anything because Carlos Mendoza is not swinging the bat. But if they're in last place by Memorial Day, or if they're still a bottom 5 offense by, mid-May, start of June, he's going to get canned. I mean, let's just be all frank about it. He's going to get fired. None of his coaching staff is back. It's Kai Correa. It's, Andy Green in the front office. Everybody's saying Beltran also putting him in the mix. I don't think he's in that mix at all. But it's going to be one of Andy Green or Kai Correa if Carlos Mendoza can't right the ship.
Yeah, and to your point about Polanco, this is the one thing I'm actually going to put on the coaching staff a little bit here. He probably should have been on the IL 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
He has not played. He has not played the field since the second game of the season. He's been limited to just DHing. He's very clearly in pain. You're watching him swing. He's barely running. He's clearly just like grimacing after every swing. Why didn't they put him on the IL when the Achilles thing first popped up? I understand you maybe try to play him a couple games, but if it keeps flaring up, just put him on the IL. At this point, you're basically playing shorthanded because he's either in the lineup and struggling or he's on the bench and completely unavailable. So it's a lose-lose situation. I mean, they acted quickly on Soto. They acted quickly on Jared Young. Polanco, his worst year in 2024, he played through a terrible knee injury basically the whole season, and it very, very negatively affected his performance. At this point, you might as well put him on the IL and give someone else a shot because now we don't know who's DHing. We don't know who's playing first base every day. They need to get that righted immediately.
Yeah, agreed. And you talking about these young guys, there's 2, Carson Bench has to be putting this now. He has not been good. He has not been good, with the bat, striking out a high clip, just looks overmatched. And I'm talking about lost, looking like his confidence is a bit strayed. We talked about this before the season. If it went really south like it has, you still have the ability to send him down, which I think you're going to have to do that. I imagine maybe that's going to happen when Soto comes back and they see that he's healthy now that you have guys like Pham and Melendez that are kind of carrying water a little bit for you. But, he's been really bad. And Marcus Semien has been horrible. I understand the glove, whatever. We talked about this trade in November. Wasn't a fan when it happened. You see what Brandon Nimmo's doing for the Rangers. I understand. Wanted to get Benja spot in the outfield. Nimmo was probably crowding things, being a DH, heavy left-handed lineup. You want to trade a player a year earlier than a year later. They could have waited a year or even 2 to do this with Brandon Nimmo. Still a very, very productive offensive player. When you look comparatively to him and Marcus Semien, there is no comparison. He is clearly, especially last 2 years, the much, much better offensive player. This is going to be probably something that bites them. It would help if somebody like Brett Beatty or anyone else could hold water and even hit 2 to push him to the bench, or even just hitting against lefties or coming in late, for defense late in leads. They don't have that because they don't have leads late. But it just feels like, again, this is a roster with a lot of money too. It just feels like it's a roster that wasn't spent well. David Stern saw an opportunity to blow this core up after they did not make the playoffs, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. Changes have to be made. I get it. But, his stamp right now, the way it's looking like, is not successful. A lot of this has to fall on him in the moment with roster construction. And to me, at the top, this field that the Brandon Nimmo trade is just so bad. I can't stress that enough. He was also insurance for Carson Bench got off to a slow start, right? You could have felt even better about sending Bench down. I understand you don't play Nimmo a lot of games in the outfield, but proven veteran who is an on-base machine and is hitting for a lot of power to start this year. Obviously, he's got something to prove being with a new team and stuff, but just like a total disappointment. And part of that goes on, it's not all on Carson Bench. It's a lot to ask of a rookie player to put on him that's been drafted less than 2 years ago. But just a lot of question marks that even like you guys, have alluded to when Soto comes back that still aren't going to be answered. He's one hitter in the lineup that you don't have to pitch to if nobody else is hitting and nobody else is.
Yeah, and Semien, I know Semien is like historically a slow starter. You're like, all right, but that's the thing is that we're going through April right now and he's hitting below the Mendoza line, and Brandon Nimmo is like the one guy that the Mets let go or traded that is actually hitting. So yeah, right now it's biting them right back in the face because Pete Alonso has not been hitting in Baltimore. The Orioles fans have been like somehow are already tired of him, which is crazy to me. Jeff McNeil, other than his weekend in Flushing, shocker there, has not been great. Edwin Diaz was unavailable for 3 days and his velocity has dropped. So, the Nimmo deal, in retrospect, I understand maybe he wasn't a great fit for the roster anymore, but yeah, it's probably a move you would like to have back right now. I mean, sure, his contract maybe wouldn't have aged great, but yeah, right now that move is looking like a loss. I think so far, I'll give him credit. The Peralta deal,
Sure.
I know his numbers aren't like necessarily pretty, but like I said, his starts have been good, I think, in general. And Tobias Myers, I know that he had the one blow up outing against the A's, but in general, he's been good.
Yeah.
Devin Williams before his garbage time outing yesterday had been good. That's the thing is that on the pitching side of things, they're getting the returns. The offensive side of things, it's a complete mess. So it falls on the lineup above all because, good pitching should win you games. But right now, they're not able to win them games because if you give up one run, you end up losing.
Yeah, I'll say this as well about Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso from a Mets fan perspective. If we're looking at their stats in April, it's going to be a long season. So when you look at what Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso did personally here as a Met, yeah, obviously they were fantastic. But let's all be frank and let's not forget what the narrative was not only on sports radio, but amongst, I would say, a good 60 to 70% of the fan base is they wanted this. Everybody called for this core to get blown up. They didn't want Alonso back. They didn't want Nimmo. The contracts were terrible. They were a part of a collapse that was historically bad. So if you're somebody on Twitter grifting for likes, whether you're, just a fan or the media, and you're saying, look what Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso was doing, or this Mets offense could really use a Brandon Nimmo or a Pete Alonso, they were here. They didn't do anything. Like they went on one NLCS run where they almost didn't make it. because they got the tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks, and they both were 89 win teams. So let's not sit here, not saying you guys, the two of you, but let's not sit here and pour our hearts out for Brandon Nimmo to come back and for Pete Alonso to come back. They didn't win anything here. And they went on 2 playoff runs where they got knocked out in the NLCS because they faced the super team, and 1 season where they collapsed at the end and got knocked out in the divisional series. So I'm not even going to harp for them. I'm going to focus on the core that we got here right now. And Marcus Semien, he doesn't look like he's got an ounce of offensive productivity left in him. And hopefully it's the slow start. Hopefully it's not the age. But when you look at a player who's regressed negatively the last 2 seasons, and we're kind of waiting for him hitting 7th or 8th to pick things up, I think that's more of, it's more of an indicator of how the rest of the group is doing than Marcus Semien himself. Because if they were scoring 3 runs a game and on this losing streak, and it was Marcus Semien struggling, we wouldn't care. I think it's really more about Bo Bichette, Jorge Polanco, and honestly Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty, because those 4 guys right there, even if Soto and Luis Robert Jr., who's kind of struggled a little bit but started strongly, if he was hitting, then it would still be 3 deep, and we would still be talking about a struggling offense.
And to your point, Vientos had that monster road trip. First road trip, especially in San Francisco, he was tearing the absolute cover off the ball. He went hitless on the next homestand. So the time is starting to run out there too. I know Ryan Clifford is not off to a good start in Syracuse, but if Clifford gets going, he's probably next man up, and Vientos is out of options. So at that point, he's probably looking at being off the roster, maybe on another team, not on the 40-man, I'll tell you that much. And to your point about looking at April stats, last year Pete Alonso had an OPS over 1,100, and he had 2 months where he had 1 month where his OPS was below 600. Like he's still good overall, but like he hit that hot start. He didn't really equate any other month to it. So yeah, I agree with your sentiment there. And yeah, the old core didn't, I thought they failed expectations. I felt like every year ever since Steve Cohen bought the team, the expectation was to contend, and they had a couple of uncompetitive years, 21 and 23. I mean, okay, maybe calling 21 an uncompetitive year is a bit of a stretch, but 2023 they were largely uncompetitive. 2025 they completely folded after having the best record in baseball for the first 2.5 months. So yeah, I totally agree with your point. But right now, yeah, it's about to what Sal has been saying. Can they find their identity right now? What is their identity? They're trying out a different lineup every single day. Who knows what positions guys are playing? They're batting Brett Beatty third against Shohei Ohtani. It sort of reminds me of those Terry Collins era lineups, where John Mayberry Jr. and Eric Campbell are batting 4th and 5th against Clayton Kershaw. Respectfully to those guys, it's kind of lopsided when you're facing a future Hall of Famer with those guys in the middle of your order. So it's also too early to make a trade. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, and to quickly touch on Mark Vientos before we move on, it's known that they tried to get rid of him in the offseason and at the deadline. They wanted to trade him for Luis Robert Jr., and the White Sox said, no, we'll take the utility infielder instead. So even the White Sox didn't really want Mark Vientos. And to your point, Matthias, yeah, out of options is really a first baseman. We know he can play third base defensively, and he's not hitting. So if you think that they won't trade him or they won't bench him, or, I mean, who knows, maybe Carlos Santana will be a free agent soon or out there. First base is so replaceable that, I mean, if Mark Vientos doesn't start hitting, he might not be a Met by July or August.
Yeah, this is just the worst. That's all I have to say about it. This is the worst. And it doesn't feel like it's getting any better. I guess you can only go up from here. Hey, the Mets didn't lose today. If anybody wants
progress,
they didn't lose today. They didn't play, but that doesn't matter. They didn't lose. Just strange stuff. And it feels like every year that Cohen's had this high expectations, and it's just outside of a couple of good stretches in some years, they have fallen very, very short of it. And we'll see how Stearns pivots with this, because now, like we've saying, this is kind of solely on, this is his team. This is who he's put together. So he's going to have to take a lot of this responsibility. As we've talked about, I think the manager obviously gets the axe way before Stearns ever does, because Cohen spent a lot of time and money pursuing him. And I don't think he's going to end that sooner than later, but anybody, I don't know, break the craft services table, maybe break a bat over a stereo if they still use stereos in the clubhouse. I don't know, but anything. They just look lost. They look like they're all falling asleep. I don't really understand. A lot of new guys, maybe New York. It's, hard to handle at first, but when you're getting a lot of money and you're, coming here, understand the expectations, it's hard to kind of hide behind them at this point. Hopefully at some point they start running towards it, because this is talk about their identity. I think it's just not completely crashing in the field. Like, hopefully maybe landing the plane like with it intact. And hopefully that could change, because we were hoping for them to soar. That was a great plane reference that came out of nowhere, guys. So we're going to end on that, because that was good. Cubs going to Chicago. They're in Chicago now, I guess, but they're off day. They're hanging out by the river. Like Chris said, they're not taking extra at-bats, unfortunately. We'll have to kill them for that. No, I'm only kidding. But hopefully they can get it right. Chicago's a fun city. It's nice. It's really field. Maybe they'll get inspired by the Ivy. Who the hell knows? Probably not. But we'll see what happens. I'll catch everybody up with the Manzo Minute for the next game. But we'll wrap things up on the podcast here. And we'll catch you next week. Maybe we'll be able to talk about a win. Who knows? Maybe that's asking too much, but we'll see. But keep riding along here, folks. It's a long season. And as always, even when we don't want to, let's go Mets.